Well, hello and welcome to this latest video. In this video, we're going to look at forms. Forms are an enormous subject in HTML and they're very powerful. You can collect all sorts of information from the user. It can also be used to display information as well, and they really are a very big subject. So we're going to look at the basics. I'm not going to go into much detail here. I will be producing a gist which will give a lot more information later on, but as I say, it's a huge subject and it's taking me quite some time to produce the gist. Okay, so let's start. I've created a folder called HTML10 and I've got a blank file, HTML file called index in it. I've created notes on this screen that you can see here and also another screen that I have because it is a huge subject, so I need to make sure I remember everything. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move my notes over and we'll then work from the notes. Okay, what I've done is I just used Emmet. I typed in the exclamation mark, the bang, and pressed tab, and I got the default layout for the HTML. And then inside of this I've just put a lot of information so that it helps me remember everything it is. Right, a form basically collects user data. That's what a form does. But you can collect all sorts of user data. So to create a form, it's very easy. You just open it and close it. Now this form here won't be very useful because it needs to have a name. Forms really do need to have a name. They do need to have more information and they need to have actions and other types of things before they become useful. So one of the easiest ways of creating a form, if you didn't see the Emmet video, I'll put a link to the video above, is to use Emmet and just type form and press tab. It'll automatically give you the base form style with an action. Now an action is usually a server page which will deal with the data in the form. It can also be a JavaScript action or something like that which will work on the data in the form. And this will create a basic form. If I actually save this, you'll see that nothing actually happens on the screen. If I look at the page source, you'll see that there's not much in there. Maybe it would help if I updated it. Yep, okay, so that's better. If we look at the page source, you'll see, okay, that we have all the details, but of course, at the moment, although we've created a form, nothing is visible here. Okay, so that's the basic form. Now there are two different types of methods for submitting a form to a server. The first type is GET, and you're probably very used to this because it's the system that Google uses and most of the search engines use. And the data that you enter is put into the URL and sent to the server. This is a system which is useful, say, if people want to bookmark pages or certain things like that, but it is exceptionally insecure. You do not want to do it if you have any secure information like passwords or anything like that in the form, so you would only use GET for items which have no security requirement. Using Emmet, if you just type form:/get and press enter, you'll get an outline form. And again, if I save this, nothing will actually appear on here because we actually need some information in there. Okay, the other problem with get is that you can only transmit up to 3,000 characters. So if you've got a text area or a lot of information, then you'll find that you'll run out of space. But get is very useful. It's very quick, and provided you don't have any secure information in it, then you can use it. Post, on the other hand, is unlimited amount of information. There's no limit, and it's hidden from the URL, so it actually goes up hidden. And so this is the way you would use for secure information, passwords, and that type of thing. To create post, again with Emmet, I've typed in form : post, press tab, and I get a post type form. Okay, form itself will take a number of different attributes. These are the types of character sets that you would have. You've seen the action attribute, which is what happens on the server or the JavaScript or whatever, so that the form is processed. You can have autocomplete, which allows the form to automatically complete information in it. Default is on, but you can actually set it to off if you wish by putting auto defeat is off. Okay. Right, what I'm going to do, just to make this easy, I'm going to leave that form at the top, and I'm going to move right the way down to the bottom here, and I'll just do that. Go back up to the top, so I've actually got a form. Okay, let's just remove the auto complete, and what's next? Okay, the encoding type of the document, it's usually URL encoded, and that's probably the best way to send it. The method we've talked about, which is get, which is the default. If you don't specify a method, it will go up via get. So if you want to use post, you must actually specify post. And the name of the form, which is quite important. The server needs to know what the name is so it can deal with the information. The other thing you can have is you can ask for the form not to be validated, or to be validated as it's entered, and most browsers now will validate the data if you don't set no validate. And finally, the target. Now this is an interesting one. The target is usually self, which means that any information will come back to the same page. But if you want to display it on a different page, you'd set the target to be underscore blank, and that will open a new page and submit the data on there. Field set. You can group data together if you wish within a form. So using Emmet, now what you're going to see if I save this is that it will come up, and now you can actually see there's some information. If you don't want the legend, you can actually remove it, and what will happen is it should, if I save it, of course, it should disappear. Oops, what happened there? And as you can see, we have the box around any data that we would put in there. Now usually when you have a field set or you have data, you need some form of input, and there are a lot of types of different input that you can put in. If I'll just use Emmet again, if you actually put in a basic field, the default is a text field, which is the normal type of input. So as you can see, we've just got a box. There's no actual information. We don't have anything in here. So if we give this a name, for example, first name, and we'll give it an ID of first name, like that, we can actually create a label for it, and you'll see in the label it says for. Now the for must link to the ID of the input. So, oops, if I do that, now you won't necessarily see a great deal of difference apart from the fact that there is a label which should suddenly appear. It would help, of course, if I gave it something to put in there. So we will do that, and you'll see now that first name is here. Now what this does do is it means that if you are in box, or if you're somewhere else on the form, you can actually click on the first name and the input box becomes live. You can put as many details as you like in here. If I just copy this and we'll change to last name, and so what I've done is I've just typed in BR, and what this does is gives a break. Okay, so there we are. Not very pretty, but you can actually enter some details in there, so like that. Now, as you notice, I've got no way of submitting this form at the moment. It doesn't matter if I press enter or anything like that. Nothing is actually going to happen. What do we do here? Well, we've got a number of ways that we can actually do this. Before we look at other types of input, there is an input called button, which you can use. So you could actually put in, for example, if I do input S in with Emmet, it will automatically create a submit button, and as you can see, there's no information because it's asking, the button has appeared on the screen, but there's nothing there. So if I just type submit into value and save that, we should now have a submit button. It's not very pretty. We haven't done any layout here. We haven't done any styling at all. So, but if I enter some details, and as you can see, the autocomplete is working, and then if I hit submit, okay, this page isn't working because quite simply I have got no action for the form. If you remember, okay, we have a post and the name is my form, but there's no action. I'm going to change post to get, which is the default, and if we actually submit this again, you'll see that there's information in. If I just control C and I'll put this here, you'll see that inside we have a first name and a last name, and because they were blank there was nothing submitted. So you can actually see that this is not secure. If I actually do put in my first name, you see autocomplete is on, so I can do that. click on submit, and this time if I do it, you will see that it's within the URL. So just don't put any secure information into a get, because as you can see, it's not secure. Right, so that's very basic forms, but what else can you do with a form? Well, you can do lots of different types, and here I've listed all the different types. Now, not all of these will work on all browsers, and some are new in HTML5. So if the browser doesn't support HTML5, what you'll default to is just an ordinary text field. So if the browser doesn't understand something, for example, tell, this is, I believe, only understood by Safari. So everything else, if you have tell, then what will actually happen is you're going to get a text field instead. So if I do that and then do save, we should get another field. We do, of type tell, but it doesn't understand it, so it won't actually matter what's entered, because it will be considered, although it says, you can see it's type tell, Opera doesn't understand it, so it's just an ordinary text field. As you can see, it's not any different from any other type of field. So I'll just put a I'll just do that to tidy it up a little bit, and as you can see, we've got that there. I'll just type that, and right, so okay, so not all of these are understood by all the browsers, but most, like button, checkbox, hidden, file, submit, reset, radio, and password are understood by most of the browsers. Most of the others, it has to be HTML5, and as I say, even if it's HTML5, it's not necessarily understood. I do know that Edge, Microsoft Edge, has a problem with a number of these as well. Okay, as I say, the text, I've put an asterisk next to it here. That is the default, so if the browser doesn't understand it, it will just create a default. Now, you can have different attributes for a field. So, for example, we have the telephone here, which isn't, and if we put in disabled and save it, you can see we now can't add anything into that field. It's not possible. You can set other information. Again, max and min is the value that you can actually put into a field. These are HTML5 and are not always recognized by some of the browsers, but max length is a good one, because you can actually specify how long you want, or how big you want the box to be. So on that, it specifies the number of characters on a field, and I should have done that probably. Yeah. Okay, so that's the maximum length of you can actually characters that you can put into a field. So this is very useful if you have something like a telephone number or a postal or a zip code which is quite short, you can actually, make it quite short. I'll just remove the disabled and save that, and we should be able to get only 12. Although I'm pressing the keyboard, I'm not getting any more. So maximum number of characters that will fit in there. Pattern, again, this is an HTML5 one, and this will specify regular expression. Regular expressions are something we'll deal with a lot later. Read only means that you can only read what is the value of the field. So, for example, if I say value equals hello and save that, you'll see that the form changes and it now has a default value, and I can change it. I can actually change it. I can delete it. Okay, but if I type in read only, then quite simply we will have the value of hello, and as you can see, although I can't change it. I am pressing delete, but I can't actually change it. I can't do anything with it. We'll remove that. Required. This means that the form will not submit if this is a required field and you haven't completed it. It's not, again, it's an HTML5 field, so it is a bit, it's not always in all of them. So I've got last name. If I click away from it and then I click submit, you'll see it says please fill in this field. Okay, so the browser knows that this field is required and that I need to enter something into it. So that's the required field. Oops, come down. I think we've covered. Size is another good one because you can actually specify how big something is. There we are. So size, if you put in size on a normal one, you can see I've changed that to 50 pixels, so it's now very long. Step, this is the increments for something like a range button or something like that. Again, it's an HTML5 entry, so it'll not necessarily work on all browsers. Value, we talked briefly about value. This is the default value that is going to be put into the field. Again, you can use it. You could use it as a sort of placeholder, that type of thing. There are better ways of doing that, but value is also the value that is returned to the server when you press submit. So whatever is in the field is automatically put into value and then sent to the server. Okay, so I think that's everything on that. So let's have a look at some more different types of inputs. You can have a radio button. I'll just copy and paste on this, and because as you've seen, my typing isn't very good. So here I've put in 2 radio buttons. They've got no names, okay, but if I just press save, we should see 2 radio buttons appear, 1 and 2. So we need to give them a name and we need to give them an ID. So we'll save that, and you can give them an ID. So name, and you can see them arrive. You can then click on the radio button, and as you can see, because these are not paired, you can actually change or have both of them set. Now we can do a group with the radio button, and by doing a group, then you'll have just one or the other is selected when we do that. So it's quite an easy one. You can decide which way you want it to do it. You would give it the same name and Control S on that. Actually, if I put just make it a little bit more user friendly. As you can see, now that they have exactly the same name, then you can see that they work together, and you can group them together as well. The next one is, there is a shortcut for Emmet if you want it. You can use just R instead of typing in input radio. The same for a checkbox, but this creates the checkbox. And so if we do that, we should have checkboxes. So what should we do this? We'll just call it me, because it's quick. Me and me. If I save that, then again we're just going to get them in a long line, as you can see, and as you can see here, you can check each one. Again, you'd put something before, like that, and if I just put a break here and save it, then you'll see that you can give them a different way. Now you can actually decide if you want one to be checked by default by adding the checked attribute, and as you can see, having just saved that, me is checked by default. Of course, you can give it a value as well and an ID. Right, drop down lists, select list is next. These are very useful. They allow you to have a list of items in a drop down box, but if you just have the select, and I'll just save that, you'll see nothing actually happens. You just get the blank list. You've got to have something in it. So rather than that, what we will do, oops, computer seems to have stopped working. We'll use an Emmet shortcut, which is to put a plus just after select, and this will automatically add an option into the select statement. If I save that now, you'll see it doesn't actually change because we haven't given the option a name. So we'll give it a name, say for example BMW, and we'll give it a value BMW, and we'll save that, and you'll see we now have a drop down list. This isn't very useful because there's just the one, so you can actually go and do, this computer is very slow again today, so option times 4, and so we've got 4 different options. So I'm trying to think of I don't know. Let's have a look. Ford Mini. Let's think. What else have we got? And now we should actually put the same value. We should put the same thing into value, but just for speed, I'm just going to show you this differently. And the first one is BMW, and you have a number of different ones that you can select. If you decide that you want a different one selected, so for example, if you want the Mini selected, you need to type selected in the option field, and when that saves, you can see Mini is the default. Okay, right, text area. Now, a text area is just literally an input box for people to use. It does come with a certain set of defaults, which is 30 columns and 10 rows. If I just save this, it'll probably come in here. It did, yeah. So if I do that, it will come in under Mini, and you can just type anything that you like into the text area. It doesn't matter what it is. And when you press submit, if it was within the same form, then that would be submitted back. This is one of the reasons why you would need post, because if you have a text area which allows a large amount of text, then you could go over the limit for the get. If you want more than the number of columns, so if you want to double it, we'll take it up to 60, and you'll see it'll get a bit wider. I'll just take that down because it's off the page. Okay, so let's have a look at a data list and how to put a data list in. So first of all, we want input and then list, and then then you need to say what that list is going to be. And the value of list should equal the ID of the data list. So I'll just put in, for example, cars, and then what we do is we need a data list, and that is does help if I can spell, to use Emmet, and the data list needs an ID, and this ID must equal the value of the list above. So cars in the ID must equal the value of the list above. We can then come down and we can put in some options. So if I do option times 3 and tab, that will give us 3 options, and then we only need to have the opening part of the option. We don't need the closing part. It's the value that we have here. So again, BMW, Ford, and Mini, because it's short. Now if I save this time, we now get a text box which has a drop down button on it, and you can select from that. So you could actually put something else in totally differently if you want. If we come off, come back on again. Okay, so you can see we can actually change what it is, or we can select from the list as well. So that's a data list. Finally, let's have a quick look at range. Now, range is useful if you want to give them a preset option how much they like something or they don't like it. I've done a very quick one here, so I shall just copy and paste it. It makes my life a lot easier. I must admit, I'll put a break there, and if we save that, we will get the range again. The range is set at 50%, but you can actually give it a value. You can actually give it much more information, and as you can see, you can move it backwards and forwards as well. Okay, so you can actually give it much more information on that. Okay, that's very briefly forms. Again, look at there will be a gist. It's not going to go up today. It will take me a while to put the gist up because there's going to be an awful lot of information there, but you will be able to use it as a cheat sheet for your data input if you wish. I hope you found that useful. Please like, comment and subscribe. My name's John, and I'll see you next time.